Happy holidays to everyone out there. This episode's coming out the week of Christmas. Hope everyone is staying safe, enjoying the great holiday, and hopefully everyone has a safe and fun New Year's as well. A little bit different for this episode. We do have a bonus Christmas episode, if you will. Myself, Zach, I sat down with Ray Hartjen, the author of Immaculate, How the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh, as we discuss a handful of things over our conversation, mainly geared towards the differences in today's NFL versus the NFL of the 70s, 80s, and even the early 90s. Ray was a great discussion. Very smart individual, definitely knows his football, definitely knows his ball, which we do love that here on the Ball Knowers podcast. All of his information for his book, Immaculate, is in the show notes, as well as his social media as well, if you want to give him a follow. Definitely a great guy to reach out to and discuss a handful of things, not just football, but definitely here on the Ball Knowers Pause, what we were geared towards. So we hope that you enjoy the episode and the discussion I had with Ray. Once again, Ray Hartjen, the author of Immaculate, How the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and a safe holiday season for everyone. Thanks and enjoy. That doesn't matter. But anyways, just to introduce us, this is the Ball Knowers podcast. I'm here with Ray Hartjen. My name is Zach. We here discuss a lot of things across the board. Typically on our weekly episodes, we recap what everyone missed. Maybe, hopefully, nobody really saw that Monday night game. Kind of a waste of 3 hours, if you ask me.
Dude, I'm a little disappointed, Zach, because I needed Jordan Love to have a Josh Allen type of performance in the playoffs. He didn't. I knew he wasn't going. It was a stretch anyway, but just throw the ball. I needed like 5 touchdown passes, 400 yards, no turnovers. I think he gave me 1 touchdown pass or something like that. But
Josh Jacobs looks great. Once they go up 21-0, he's not throwing that ball at all. So yeah, good luck in those points.
And I'm all for that. But when I need my fantasy points, I want to remind a little huck and chuck through the thing. But yeah. So.
The Atlanta defense, the 2 pick sixes pushed me into the fantasy championship. So I was set yesterday. I was good to go.
Yeah, it's always good to have your defense go up against the Giants this season. Right. Congratulations. Wait until next year for me, my friend. I'm coming back.
I haven't been in the fantasy playoffs since, 2011. So it's been a long time coming. I was like, wow, this is what it feels like? This is what it feels like caring about these games this late? This is exciting.
You are just 7 days away from maybe cashing a check. So you should be.
I'm already. I got to check who won, because the other semifinal had people going tonight. I'm already gonna ask. I'm the one that wants to chop it up. I'm like, hey, let's just call it even. Let's just both walk away with the win. I don't want to go for it. I love chopping it up. Everyone wins. I don't even worry about playing.
It feels good.
But no, Ray's here. He's wrote a book. I'd love to hear a little bit about the book itself and kind of the research went into it. It's called Immaculate, How the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh. It came out, correct me if I'm wrong, 50 years, or you kind of planned it around 50 years after the Immaculate Reception. Is that right?
Actually, the publication date, 2-year anniversary of publication date was yesterday. So it came out on December 22nd, 2022. Which is right in front of the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, which is today, December 23rd, 1972. It was a really bittersweet moment for me and Tom Lennox, the co-writer of the book, and that it came out, right as Franco Harris passed away unexpectedly. He lay down on his couch and he never woke up. And it was a shock. He's on the cover of our book. And it's we've become actually Tom and in particular has become very good friends with Dana, Franco's widow. But it was really kind of a blow. Here we talked so much about him in the book. We closed the book with him. And he's just a great ambassador to the city of Pittsburgh and the area. He remembered probably most for his exploits on the football field, but really he's a better man off of it. And people who got to know him recognized that. So it was kind of a bittersweet moment for us. Actually way more bitter than sweet, but it's a book that we're proud of. People ask me what Immaculate, how the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh is about. And it's kind of an interesting story. I'm not from Pittsburgh. If you're from Pittsburgh, you're called a Yinzer. And I am not a Yinzer. In fact, I was born in Texas, born in Houston, and I'm 60 years old. So I grew up back in this heyday. And I loved football back then. But my favorite team was not the Steelers. My favorite team was the Dallas Cowboys. After all, I was a Texan. I was a good Texan, right? And so being a good Texan, my favorite team had to be the Cowboys. Cowboys
has to.
Very famously lost 2 Super Bowls to the Steelers, right? So, if the 12-year-old Ray knew that the 60-year-old Ray would have a book out about the Pittsburgh Steelers, he'd be pretty disappointed. But it gets worse than that too, Zach. My second favorite team was the Houston Oilers because I was a good Texan, and they're the Tennessee Titans now. For those of you who aren't familiar, Houston Oilers second favorite team, but the Houston Oilers could never get past the Steelers and win the AFC Central Division. In fact, they lost 2 playoff games during that run in the 70s as well to the Steelers. And then my third favorite team was my mama's favorite team, and that was the Oakland Raiders, because my mama liked Kenny Stabler, just like everybody else's mama liked Kenny Stabler. Man, he's a pretty kind of a dashing type of guy, very charismatic, good-looking dude. Steelers, very famously lost 3 playoff games to the Raiders lost 3 playoff games to the Steelers during that time period. And, they would have won more Super Bowls, John Madden as a coach, if they hadn't had the Steelers try to get through. So, really, growing up as a kid, the Steelers were gum on my shoes more times than not. And, so it's interesting writing this book, and so people say, well, geez, Ray, if you weren't a Steelers fan growing up, why'd you write this book? And it's because my buddy Tom, man. My buddy Tom is the Yinzer. He's from Pittsburgh. And, he grew up during that era where this great Super Bowl, the first NFL dynasty in the Super Bowl era, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4 Super Bowl championships in 6 years, from 74 through 1980. And
yes,
they had everything going for them football wise, which is kind of unexpected because up for 39 years, the first 39 years of their existence up to 1972, the Steelers were horrible. And they needed their football team to be heroes to them because in the mid 70s, the domestic steel industry started to really get hit hard through a variety of factors. But really, it became uncompetitive. And everything in Pittsburgh was associated with the steel mills. If you didn't directly work for a steel mill, Tom's dad did. Tom's dad worked for U.S. Steel. But you were associated with something that served people who worked. So maybe you had a mechanic shop or whatever, but all of your customers worked at the steel mill, right? So they were ingrained with the steel, and they had a hard time. The Rust Belt, all through the United States, had a hard time. But nowadays, Pittsburgh is viewed as a new economy success story, Zach. That's a leader in technology, robotics, healthcare, medical research. It's got academia. It's got a lot of things going for it. And Pittsburgh routinely shows up in these lists of most livable cities. And Tom always thought, well, you know what? How did Pittsburgh do it? But other Rust Belt cities like Detroit, Buffalo, Akron, all these, Gary, Indiana, all these other Rust Belt cities, have still struggled to find, to go past the industrialization and transform into a new economy city. And in Tom's mind, it was the Steelers. They were kind of built in the mirror image of the city, hard-nosed, scrappy, bring your lunch pail to work type of a team that, reflected the blue collar, folks of Pittsburgh, people of Pittsburgh, they took showers when they came home from work, not before they went to work, right? It's just a team that was built in the image of the community. And so he had this idea bouncing around in his head for decades. It's like, this would make a good book about how the Steelers saved Pittsburgh. And finally, one day, it was during the pandemic, I think, in 2020, I just kind of grabbed him by the shoulders and said, hey, Tom, man, if not now, when? Let's write this book. Let's get it done. And, 18 months later, we got to have a book, and I'm pretty proud of it. It's been very well received, and the reviews are very good on it. So it makes us feel proud that we're able to, put the collection of these stories together in this book and bring out to market. So appreciate you having me on so I can talk about it a little.
No, of course. I will say, and my wife can attest to it too. I am not a reader. I have not read anything unless it's a sports book. I've read um, Juiced. I've read what is it? Bad Boy with Dennis Rodman. I think those last two, the Canseco and Dennis Rodman. I think those last two books that I could vividly know and remember that I read from like front to back. Besides that, I can't anything. So I actually did order your book because I care about football in general, but your story. So I'm excited to read it. But if it's any sort of regular academic book for school or something, nope, no chance.
This book is, this was a challenge for us because you couldn't talk about the Steelers saving Pittsburgh without talking about Pittsburgh, right? And you couldn't talk about Pittsburgh without talking about Pennsylvania and steel industry and all these people. Yeah. So, we did, and Pittsburgh was, started up in the 1600s, right? So, how do you write this book? Do you write it with the history guy in mind? And so you start out and talking about Pittsburgh and all this, and then it's going to bore a sports guy like you to death. Or do we start with the football part and then try to, how do we do it? So we kind of weave the story around. We use the Immaculate Reception game as kind of the pivot point, where that was kind of the mark of, the Steelers, were they a good team or not? They had their first good season ever. The Immaculate Reception took place at their first ever home playoff game. We build the story around that, but we kind of weave back and forth from telling the stories of Pittsburgh and the stories of the Steelers and kind of delve into these personalities that made both the steel industry, the city of Pittsburgh, and the Steelers. So I'm hoping you enjoy it. If you like it, please consider leaving a review on any bookseller site. And if you don't like it, just kind of keep it to yourself. All right, Zach?
No, I think that's good. And I think Pittsburgh is one of those cities that, to talk about the history of the city itself, and it's been around, forever. So talking about the steel industry is a huge part. You don't want to write a book just about sports because, yes, well, that appealed to me, of course. But I think just regardless of the history of the city and weaving in and out, I think that I'm actually more excited now, to kind of see how that kind of plays out. So
I hope so, man. In the book, we delve into, these characters, these great players. I mean, one of the things that came back, Zach, you and I have spoken before, I watched a lot of these games, most of these games as a kid. And then, 50 years later, 48 years later, I'm watching these games again on YouTube. And it was really kind of an amazing experience. First of all, for a guy like me, watching these games, man, I get to listen to Howard Cosell on a recording of Monday Night Football. That's awesome, man. Dandy Don Meredith. There may not have been any better than when Dandy Don Meredith and Howard Cosell shared the same booth. I mean, those are like two. Hearing that and Kurt Gowdy, and so taking me back to my youth of just listening to these announcers describe what's going on in the field, but then getting looking at these players from a longtime fan of the NFL and football in general, and over time, and not through a kid's eyes where you're like a fan, but now I've seen a lot of football, right? And these players that the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted and then coached up are amazing. I live in Southern California, as you do now. Down here, there's a lot of Aaron Donald fans, right? Recently retired from the LA Rams. Truly fantastic ball player. But if you're deciding who's like the best defensive tackle in NFL history, you've got two people to choose from: Aaron Donald and number 75 for the Steelers, Mean Joe Green. You go back and watch some of these YouTube games, and you just see number 75 on the field had to be accounted for every single play because he impacted it. And just like Aaron Donald did, he was Aaron Donald 50 years before Aaron Donald, put on a helmet, right? So, it's really cool going back. We, as we watch this, we tend to, I think, as fans, get caught up in this recency effect. If we name like the top 10 quarterbacks of all time, they're probably going to be all these guys who played, in the last 12 years or whatever, right? But he goes, the top 10 quarterbacks of all time, then you got to start thinking about some other guys. And then you have these interesting debates. Like for the Steelers, the quarterback for their 4 Super Bowl championships in the 70s was Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got 4 Super Bowl rings. But, over the course of his career, he completed less than 52% of his passes. So you're thinking, well, wait a second, 52% of your passes. I mean, your boy, Anthony Richardson, He's the only guy who can't complete 52% of his passes. And in today's NFL, if you don't complete like 63, 64% of your passes, you might not get a chance to hit the field very often, right? And so then that,
Yeah.
that allows us football fans to then, talk about the differences in the game back from, the early 70s or even before that to the game that we have today.
No, yeah, Terry Bradshaw, 4 Super Bowls. That's crazy. And you kind of compare that, great quarterback, won 4 Super Bowls. I mean, that's hard to do for any career, but you take a look at a guy like, Jim Kelly, who lost 4 Super Bowls. You're like, oh, well, do you hold him as the same, higher than Terry Bradshaw, less because he went to Super Bowl 4 times and lost? He's in the Hall of Fame, yes, of course, but you look at kind of the stats and it's 2 different stories. But I mean, that to get that Super Bowl stamp of approval, it definitely kind of helped your case. Unfortunately,
then lately, you can look at a player like Eli Manning, right? He has 2 Super Bowls. Is he a Hall of Famer? I don't know about that. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer. He's got 2 Super Bowls. That's awesome. Look at the course of his career. But an interesting perspective is, looking at statistics. And you see a quarterback like Jim Kelly. You compare Jim Kelly to Terry Bradshaw's statistics, just like face value statistics. You say, well, Terry Bradshaw, the highest he ever threw for yards in a season was 3,700 yards, which is there's not a whole lot, right? But, think back to the game and, the illegal contact rule is a rule that I like to bring up a lot. When it came out in 1978, it was actually called the Mel Blount rule. That's how people referred to it, because it was number 47 of the Steelers, Mel Blount, who today would still be the prototypical NFL cornerback. 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", 220 pounds, long, rangy, fast, could cover receivers. Plus, he wasn't afraid to tackle. And when he showed up at a tackle, supporting the run defense, he showed up with some mean intentions, right? Mel Blount, Hall of Famer, great player. But Mel Blount also would basically just take receivers out and molest them the entire route. So prior to 1978, a quarterback in the NFL, you couldn't throw to a spot on the field. You've got your Colts garb on. There was no better quarterback ever, in my opinion, at throwing to a spot, knowing his receiver is going to be there, than Peyton Manning was. I mean, Peyton Manning knew what every player was going to be on the field, and he knew the timing. So you would look, progression 1, progression 2. You say, I'm out of time. I know someone's going to be there. I know Marvin Harrison's going to be over there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw it up to him, and I'm not going to throw the pick because I trust that Marvin's going to be there, and he's at least going to fight for this ball. It's not going to be an interception. Back before the illegal contact rule, if you couldn't see your receiver, you had no idea what he was going to be. You were getting pushed and shoved all over the field, right? There was no throwing a guy open. You had to make eye contact with him, and there he is. And completing 50% of your passes prior to 1978. That was a good year. I mean, there used to be a saying. Bear Bryant, coach of Alabama, used to say he used to run the ball. Infamously ran the ball almost all the time, even with a quarterback like Joe Namath at Alabama. He says 3 things can happen when you throw a football, and 2 of them are bad. And so that's part of the kind of like a philosophy back in the 70s. If you're only going to complete 50% of your passes, you only need to throw the ball really to change things up from the running game, or you needed to throw the ball, you needed to move the ball downfield because you were behind and it's time to play catch up. But yeah, interesting to take a look at statistics, but then, look at take a step back, look at the context of the game and see what was different about it. And rules, certainly a big part of it. Late 70s also, linemen can start using their hands, blocking. And, now I mean, if you don't twist a guy and pull him down, you're basically holding the guy, putting the hands out, getting the gloves on him, getting him, hopefully underneath the pads and being able to move around. Before that, it was kind of like, if you've seen those old football cards, you had your fists in front of you and you're kind of like blocking with your foot. Yeah. Think about how different that aspect is of the game too. So, and then the third thing I want to talk about as it relates to the passing game, quarterbacks were regular players in the NFL. Nowadays you can't even fall on the quarterback, and it's roughing the passer. Back in the day, as they say, Zach, yeah, you could hit a quarterback in the knees, you could hit him in the head, you could do whatever you wanted to with him. Certainly, you could fall on him. Much tougher back there, so harder for the offensive linemen to block. They were open season for quarterbacks, and there's open season for receivers. So you never really knew where your receiver was going to be. So a lot different playing quarterback back in the 70s than it was playing quarterback in the 80s, 90s. Now.
No, yeah, there's a 30 for 30 on ESPN coming out too on the New York Sack Exchange. They were talking about hitting quarterbacks, and I can't remember if it was Gastineau that quoted or something, and he's like, if you hit the quarterback, he's like, and he got up, you didn't do your job. I was like, damn, you cannot say that now. You can't even think that.
you say something like that, yeah, and it was a different era. It's kind of an era that, frankly, I miss it. I know the NFL's got a lot invested in marketing the game around their superstars. People like Patrick Mahomes, geez, we see him on national television all the time. I'm so tired of seeing Patrick Mahomes, just like I'm tired of seeing the Dallas Cowboys on primetime games. But it's more difficult to market a team, around, backup quarterbacks and things like that. Quarterback's an important position, get paid $50 million to play the position. So, they should be important. But, when you get to some of these roughing the passer calls, but a couple of years ago, it was going around, we're calling them nothing the passer calls. You're like, come on, that's not a penalty. It is football. You're wearing a helmet, and I even saw Aaron Rodgers once this year get up from a roughing the passer call, but he's like, that's not roughing. Yeah, but okay. It's a penalty against the other team.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we'll take the 15 yards, but
I like when they actually admit it, though, which, it can't change the call, obviously. It's not like Aaron Rodgers can be like, no, take it back. But I like when they acknowledge, like, oh, no, I got hit, but that was good tackle. Good tackle. The best guy used to do it. Andrew Luck used to always compliment the guys that sacked him. Hey, good tackle, boy, good tackle. Helped him up when he got sacked every time. Oh, nice hit. Yeah. And that's why he retired early, because he got hit. Our offensive line was terrible, but that's another story.
He was very good. He was very good. What a shock it was for everybody. I was living in the Bay Area at the time, and the Bay Area, he didn't grow up there, but played college ball there, and the Bay Area kind of used him as Andrew as one of their own. And when he retired, it certainly sent shockwaves everywhere, particularly you Colts fans are like, wait a second.
During the preseason game, too, I was like, what is happening? I was so shocked. No idea. They booed him, too, which was kind of sad, too. But I was like, yeah, let's move on.
I think they've made up. It's weird. Us fans get kind of like that. I remember when Barry Sanders, rather unexpectedly retired from the Detroit Lions. They're like, what? What are you doing? Of course, then Calvin Johnson did, 20 years later or whatever. But yeah, when it's such a brutal sport, Zach, man, it is not a game to be taken lightly. And so when you look at a player that plays deep into a storied career like Tom Brady, you're like, a lot of respect whether you like Tom Brady or not, just being able to lace up the cleats and pull on the helmet for that game. It's a tough game, and it's a not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
No, I agree. Yeah, and kind of, me wanting, because I wasn't there, I was, born in 95. So kind of even before that, 70s and 80s, the game out was, more physical. I think that's kind of the root of it. I think the game itself was more physical. Just seeing, the 30 for 30s and the specials or any sort of highlights that I've personally seen, the game itself looks more physical. You made the comment, Terry Bradshaw threw over 3,700 yards, once in his career, and right now there's probably the top 9 quarterbacks are already at 3,700 yards with 2 more games left. So it's the game has changed and it's moved away from the physicality. I personally have think that I can see. I'm just wondering if do you notice that let's take that back. When did you notice there was kind of a shift, or when did you kind of personally see a shift in the physicality of the game from 70s, 80s? You talk about Mean Joe Green, and I mentioned the New York Sack Exchange and Gastineau, and hitting the quarterback, and them hitting him wherever they want, and running the ball, not throwing that much because they want to just tackle him harder and stuff. When did you kind of notice a shift, I guess, if you will?
Yeah, I think it started in the late 70s when the introduction of the illegal contact rule. Like I said, opened the passing game, and then you had some interesting, offenses then come about. 3 wideouts became almost a regular thing. It was introduced a little bit, in the late 70s with people like Sid Gilman and coaches like that. But you'd always have these teams that would maybe try to spread it out a little bit. Started really in the 80s. Let's do 3 wideouts, 4 wideouts, maybe play a little bit more of that. And as he started getting smaller receivers on the field, getting away from sometimes the tight end, still kept a fullback in up until, the 90s or so. You started seeing, teams try to spread it out. And it was always, a bit of a gimmick type of offense. When you couldn't really match up physically. It's like, if we can't match up physically, let's spread it out so we can at least play to our advantage, which would be speed. But now, everybody is big and fast. But, so it kind of started like in the 80s, the game being a little bit less physical because teams were emphasizing the pass more. The best way to run the ball is just to blow the other team off the line of scrimmage, right? You can do some fancy things. Washington Redskins at the time, they won a Super Bowl very famously with their counter tray play, pulling linemen one direction, but then having the trap play go the other way. That was a bit of a finesse thing, but their offensive line was known as the Hogs. They were big, dirty, mean, tough dudes. Unbelievably not that big. Offensive linemen today are ginormous.
Yeah.
They were back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, you have like one 300 pounder on your team, in the early 80s. Now, every offensive lineman is well into the 320s, 340s, and some of them are up there, 370s, 380s, even more. So, yeah, the 80s, things started to get a little less physical. And then, offensive play callers kind of, in my opinion, they fell in love with their call sheets. It's like, listen, I have an 8.5 by or an 11 by 17 piece of paper, maybe 2 of them. It's organized with all these plays and they're color coded, and I want to call them all. And so, there's like, since when is like, 2nd and 3 a passing down, or 3rd and 1 a passing down? 4th and 2, we could definitely got to throw it. For old timers like me, that was just running the football, having a mindset of, we're going to run the football. We're also going to run the same play over and over and over until you prove that you can't stop me. And that was still a philosophy up into the 90s. Norv Turner, the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, that was his philosophy. We're going to run the same handful of plays. You prove to me you can stop it, we'll stop it. And yeah, I mean, they may have practiced and game planned out, 50, 60 plays, but the Cowboys really only ran 10, 11, 12 plays, and they ran them each 4 or 5 times, and they won a bunch of Super Bowls, right? But, from that point on, it seems like the play callers, I mean, they're calling all sorts of stuff. Let's throw the ball around like it's a video game. It's really cool, I think. And I think another component of that is running backs don't typically last long in the NFL, right? You hit the age of 30, and that's kind of your expiration date. And, so now with salary caps and things like that, it's like, geez, do we really want to invest in a player maybe it's not going to be around? And, kind of the rule of thumb now is you draft a guy after his rookie contract, you franchise him once, and then you let him go, Saquon Barkley style, right? And Barkley's fantastic year. But what's kind of cool, Zach, is this year it seems like the NFL is kind of going back to narrow ties, if you will. It's like, let's go back to the 70s, 80s. Let's establish the running game. Let's stop the other team from running. It seems like there's this emphasis this year, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and others. You look what Tampa Bay's been doing over the last, 6 to 8 weeks, whatever. It's like, run the football. Let's control the line of scrimmage. Let's control field position. Let's not turn the ball over. Let's use play action pass. Take the big shots when we get it, and win ball games along the way, right? And so it's kind of cool to see the running back coming back into the game here these last couple of years, particularly this year, and seeing a little bit more of a rushing attack, and then that physical aspect that goes along with it. I think us football fans, really like that. And when the weather gets cold, the playoffs come around, you got to run the football anyway, right? So it's been cool.
No, I agree, and I think I've seen it more too. You made the comment. We're gonna keep running the same play until you figure out how to stop us, right? And you would think that it's so easy. Us as fans, you're looking at just watching on the couch or whatever, and you're like, you got 7 yards on that. If you do it twice, you're gonna get a first down every time. Why would you not do that? And they rarely would do the same play. And the only time I actually saw this season, like, where I looked back and I was like, wow, that was like the 3rd run play in a row, 4th, and I had to go check on my phone or rewind it to check. It was last week, the Sunday Night Football game. It was Packers Seahawks, and Matt LaFleur ran, I think it was 8 plays in a row on their first drive with Josh Jacobs
Yeah.
because they couldn't stop it. He's getting 6.5, 7 yards. Why would you not?
Why would you want to mix it up? That's one of my pet peeves, Zach, is like, you get a running play, it's like 7 yards. Next one, it's 5 yards, first down. Next one, you get like 6 yards. And then it's like, let's throw it deep. Why?
And then the pick happens.
Like, keep away and just keep running down their throats until we stop it. And, as you know, I'm a Seahawks fan. I was watching that game last Sunday night. It's like, but what can you do when you can't stop the run? That's you need to stop the run, and you need to be able to run. And if particularly if you have a young quarterback, a running game is the best friend of a young quarterback. And nowadays, you need to have a quarterback. You can't afford to have them sit around on the bench. You need to see if they can play.
Yeah, and that kind of ties in. I think how the game has changed, especially in the last 2-3 years. Is you said running game is a rookie quarterback or maybe first or second year quarterback's best friend, and I 100% agree. And I think what nowadays is these rookie quarterbacks, they're just throwing them in there, right? And they're saying, hey, we need Caleb Williams. We need you to throw for 270 to try and win this game. Hey, Anthony Richardson, we need you to run for 100 yards and throw for 220 to win this game. And that sucks. Like, that's so much pressure on somebody that was playing in the Sugar Bowl 8 months ago or whatever it is. And so I think
even more than that, Zach, they were going to their high school prom just 4 or 5 years ago. I mean,
that's
think of
true.
it that way, right? So
Anthony Richardson played 14 college games as a starter at Florida. When I saw that, and I was like, oh man. Or when I watched him in Florida, and then when I saw that we were going to draft him, I was like, oh man, I think he needs to see the field a little bit more. But
you see like a quarterback like Michael Penix Jr. He started his first game and what are you going to do? You're going to play really good defense. Of course, you're playing against the New York Giants, and you're going to run the ball with Bijan Robinson, and you're going to not make him have to be a superhero like Caleb Williams. And you see a lot of these quarterbacks, and if I remember Derek Carr's brother. I mean, he was playing on an expansion team, the Houston Texans. They weren't very good, and he was getting pummeled, right? But it's like we got one hope, and that is to put the ball into Carr's hand and have him chuck it downfield. And I think he ended up with a Super Bowl ring as a backup quarterback for the Giants. But yeah, it's I think in the media now, a lot of people are saying like, the Bears need a head coach that can develop and not ruin Caleb Williams. Is there a chance that this generational talent could be ruined? And he's probably maybe the fourth best rookie quarterback this year. He's the number one pick in the draft. He's had a tough go at it, but when you look at their team, they don't have a lot around him. I think he's got some toys to play with from the receiving game again, but from the offensive line and the running perspective, it's a lot on his shoulders, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's where I've seen, kind of in the last few years, all the rookie quarterbacks that kind of get thrown in, and it, it's worked out so successfully very few times where a rookie quarterback comes in and just dominates, right? I mean, Jaden Daniels doing great as a rookie quarterback. Is he going to do that the next year? Who knows? RG3 did it, took Washington, ironically the same team, to the playoffs his rookie year because they threw them in there, never made the playoffs again, because they figured him out. So they kind of throw them in, and obviously Jaden Daniels has a lot of offensive weapons. He could run the ball as well. But I feel like they just, I don't know. He said, mentioned it, like they have a lot of offensive toys, that throw to. Caleb Williams, DJ Moore and Romo Dunze and Keenan Allen's now there, over there obviously too. But if you don't develop the run game, I mean, DeAndre Swift is getting 6 carries a game for 36 yards. That's not going to help anything. So I think developing the quarterbacks by building them around them with a good offensive line and a good run game is the better way to go, and not having them. Caleb Williams throws the ball like over 35 times like every single game, I feel like, which is insane.
It's when that's all you got and you're kind of one dimensional, you kind of got to go that route. But it's like, hopefully it doesn't get ruined. I think it's easy to do, easy to lose your confidence, but also easy to be a bit skittish, and not have great throwing mechanics, maybe not being, planted on that back foot and driving off on the throw. without that, maybe you don't have the arm strength to make the throw that you thought you could make. There's an interception, then the confidence goes down again, and just the aspect of getting pounded on. I saw Spencer Rattler today. So I don't he said he had a tough game, as you would expect him to have. But he had one throw where he's jumping off of his feet. He's in the air and he guns it. He completes that pass. Next throw, throws in a triple coverage and gets a pick, right? And you're like, rookie quarterbacks, man. You get what you get.
And you're down 28-0, and you're kind of like, hey, man, good luck. Like, do what you can. So, yeah, it definitely puts him in a hard spot. The rookie quarterbacks is... I agree, too. Caleb Williams, probably fourth best rookie. Drake May looks pretty good if they could develop a run game, too. I'd like to see him succeed as well. Kind of shifting to more teams as a whole versus quarterbacks. I think you mentioned earlier, or maybe before we started, before the episode, it's difficult as a team, to win a Super Bowl twice in a row, right? The Steelers did it twice, I believe, in the 70s. I think Denver did it. Dallas has done it a couple times. Maybe, the Niners. Obviously, Kansas City's looking for 3 times. Do you think it's harder now as a team to win the Super Bowl twice, or was it harder back in maybe 70s, 80s?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I've thought about that. It's so difficult to repeat because you play so many extra football games, right? You're playing 17 regular season games, and to win the Super Bowl, you win at least 3 playoff games, and if you're in the wild card situation, you're gonna have to win 4. That's a lot of football games. That's a lot of wear and tear, and so historically, the loser of the Super Bowl has always kind of had a bit of a struggle the next year. They kind of, for whatever reason, maybe it's mental. They go into the off season kind of flat. They lose into January or February. Next thing you know, it's July. Kind of start off. There's always been this kind of like Super Bowl hangover in some respects for the loser. I think for the winning team, I would think it's probably maybe more difficult now to repeat, and it's amazing what the Chiefs has been able to do. I don't know how they've been able to win so many football games this year. So many close ones, but they get it done and they take care of business. But to stay healthy for the whole playoff run, and then with the amount of attention that is thrown on you, globally, and the expectations and playing to those expectations and just being able to handle that. Maybe it's more difficult now. Back in the 70s, Zach, dudes had jobs in the off season. Mel Blount, we talked about him, Hall of Fame cornerback. He got into a protracted holdout because he wanted more than his $50,000 a year salary. And nowadays, Dak Prescott cashes a $3 million check, whether he plays or not. That's it's staggering the amount they play. There's a friend of mine, his dad is a Hall of Fame center, Frank Gadsky, and he was Otto Graham's center with the Cleveland Browns. He made his money by selling insurance. He was an insurance guy. That's what he did for 9 months out of the year, and then he went to practice and in late summer, and was an offensive lineman, a Hall of Fame offensive lineman. So yeah, back in the days, things were maybe a little bit different. I think it's probably more difficult to repeat now, but I don't think it's ever been easy. So any team that's done it, hats off to them for being able to put it all together. And there's so many chances. As the saying goes, any given Sunday, right? And every player in the NFL is good. I laugh at people that say, Alabama could play in the NFL. They're better than the Falcons or whatever. It's like, no, they're not even close. This is everybody in the NFL. People have said for years, National Freak League. Everybody is a freak. Even the athlete that you think is not a freak athlete is a freak athlete. And then there's some just flat out super freak athletes. They're all big. They're all strong. They're all fast. They're all smart. They all love the game. So some teams might struggle New York Giants. We'll look at them this year. But,
Yeah.
in a lot of ball games, they've had a chance to win a lot of ball games, and they've won a couple of ball games, and who knows, maybe they'll win a couple more for the league.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think it is harder now. I think too, and you made a point is the health is important. That they, uh, they play. Got to win 20 games or whatever. You're playing 20 games to get to a Super Bowl 21, etc. Depending if wild card or not. That's a lot of games to play. And to win. And I think health is the big reason. I think,
and you got to be healthy in the off season, right? I mean,
yeah.
To prepare for the next season. I mean, you're constantly got to take care of your body. So health is a huge thing.
What I do think though that I've seen more often, or maybe the whole holdout trade request thing. I think that's sort of new, which I don't like. I think it kind of mirrors, the NBA when they kind of build those superstar teams. Like they say, LeBron James goes to, the Heat with Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, etc. You got DeAndre Hopkins, an all-pro wide receiver, signing with the Chiefs, trying to get a ring. Who was Antonio Brown did the same thing, signed on with the Bucks. Kareem Hunt coming out of nowhere to kind of sign with the Chiefs because everyone wants to get a ring. And I don't like that. I like building a team and having a franchise of the same team, like Terry Bradshaw on the Steelers, like Ben Roethlisberger and Santonio Holmes and Hines Ward, like to stay with the same guys and build a franchise in that way. And I think the NFL kind of shined away from that a little bit more in recent years than they did.
You can't really blame the players. It's not a long career. Make as much money as you can. I don't like it how everyone's friends with one another. Back when I was a kid. Man, you did not like players on the other teams in all aspects of society, right? But whatever level, high school football teams didn't like other high school football teams. You definitely wouldn't have the Oakland Raiders back of the 70s and the 80s hanging out with like the Pittsburgh Steelers guys. That doesn't happen. Not even at the Pro Bowl in Hawaii. It was like, you're on their team forever. We're on our team forever. We don't like you and stuff like that. Now everyone, let's go to Vegas, hang out, and do all that stuff. That's kind of weird. I do like it when players, stay with the same team over and over. It is interesting how the holdout, there's been some, back in the day, holdouts used to be kind of just a wink, wink. It's like, hey, coach, Walter Jones of the Seattle Seahawks, for example. I don't know if he ever went to a training camp. He's a perennial Pro Bowler, Hall of Fame, left tackle. He didn't need to go to training camp. So it's like, hey, we have roster limits. Wink, wink. I'm going to hold out. I don't want to practice anyway, but come a week before the final preseason game, I'll come to camp, whatever, and step right in, not miss a beat, and then you get an opportunity to look at another ball player or things like that. But it's it's the. I don't know who to blame on holdouts. I look at I think back to Jamarcus Russell, and he was first pick of the NFL draft for the Oakland Raiders, quarterback, and by all everybody knew he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. It wasn't like he was his cerebral approach to the game, right? He was just a monster. He's big, strong, giant arm. And he's holding out because he wants more money. And Al Davis, the owner and general manager of the Raiders, is, he lets him hold out for the entire preseason. A rookie quarterback, what do you need the most? Al Davis wins. Jamarcus Russell comes and shows up to the team. I think it was in week 1 or 2 of the regular season. Had missed the entire preseason. He wasn't going to play. So congratulations, Al. You saved $1 million just to pay a first-year salary for a guy that's never going to see the field because he's had no practice reps. He's a rookie, and again, he needed those practice reps. He didn't need to, have a stronger arm. He has a strong arm and all that. And Jamarcus Russell never made it in the NFL. He might be viewed as one of the biggest flops ever, but would it have been a flop if he had just been paid money and had an opportunity to go to training camp? I don't know. So it's like, what are you looking for here? And if you're way off, from salary to, expectations to what a team can give you. Yeah, maybe a holdout comes, but I mean, NFL, particularly at a quarterback position, but almost any other position too, it's those practice reps, just being able to, to be in camp. And these holdouts, it's really rare, I think, for players to hold out and then to come back and be effective.
No, I agree. Ask Le'Veon Bell. He held out for the whole season for Pittsburgh, comes back, gets that deal with the Jets, and is all downhill after that.
And yeah, tough position too to lose a year. And I know it wasn't a year of wear and tear for Le'Veon Bell, but it's still another year. And when you're playing a game for it really is a game of inches, right, Zach? It's the difference between breaking a arm tackle and getting hit by a shoulder isn't really that far away, right? So he's just a little bit of time, and losing a year. I think Le'Veon Bell recently has said that was a mistake. He probably shouldn't have done that, but it's a difficult position to do it. With a running back having such a limited lifespan in the NFL, it's like get your money while you can. But do you really want to pay a running back? As a Seahawks fan, I think back to that Sean Alexander contract, and you even see with the Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott, you pay him for past performance, and the running back position, you really shouldn't do that. It's like, man, thank you for everything that you do, but I can't afford to break the bank for you because Frank Gore is an anomaly. Most other running backs, even the great Emmitt Smith, man, you hit 30, it starts to go downhill. And if you hit 30 after carrying the ball for 250, 300 times a year, for 7-8 years before that, you really begin to start falling off the cliff. I remember the great Eddie George. Man, Eddie George, in the middle of one season, went from being Eddie George to being Eddie George. It's how fast it happens in that position.
No, the lifespan of running backs is definitely crazy, and I agree. They always pay them, which is so crazy to me. Like, pay them on pass. Hey, you did really well the last 2 seasons. We're just gonna hopefully pray that you do that for the next 7, because that's what we're signing you on for. For
it's
McCaff.
It's probably going to happen again because Saquon Barkley's had such a great year.
Yeah,
right. Everybody's going. You can't pay. I mean, the Giants are like, oh, we can't pay a running back that much. We franchised him once, and look at him this year. He's been worth every penny, right? And if you got paid twice as much, he'd be worth that much.
No, he's been good. Do you think? I would love for the NFL to shift more towards the run game. What I think is what people don't like is it's not as fun, for the casual fan to watch a game, right? It's not as exciting. My wife, she watches, football when it's on or whatever, and she's like, oh, I like Joe Burrow. Who is he throwing to? Jamar Chase throwing. I mean, seeing Jamar Chase catch an 80-yard touchdown, was that exciting? Yeah, that's awesome. Everyone loves that. Great highlight. But I would love the Chase Brown 50 yards that he carried on the ground in that drive first off, as a fan.
And I think it's is it exciting? Joe Burrow and his frosted tips, throwing to Jamar Chase with his
chains
and necklaces. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. They're also 7 and 8. Yeah. Right. So, do you want to have a super exciting team? Yeah, okay, man, play 4 wideouts, do all that stuff. You want to win football games, particularly winning playoff football games, you're going to have to run the football. Remember, they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They also had Joe Mixon in the backfield, right? They were a team that could run the football. And I like the Eagles. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to, boo-boo on them. They are fun to watch. But, at the end of the day, they're also 7 and 8. Right. What's look at teams with stronger running games. I think there's so many advantages to being able to run the football. It eliminated a lot of mistakes, and particularly when you're on the road in the NFL, you got loud crowds, and you see. I mean, how many times do you see a game, Zach? Quarterback comes up, decides to change a play. You've got an offensive lineman already down in the stance for too long. They jump. Now your 2nd and 6 turns into 2nd and 11, and you're behind schedule and down in distance, and bad things tend to happen, right? So those are things it's a lot different when you're looking at 2nd and 6 or less, because you've gotten a good run game. John Madden, great football coach, he used to look at 2nd and 10 as a running play. It's like, let's get a few yards where it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5. A lot of you see them now in the NFL. It's like 2nd and 10, we got to throw the ball because we're already we're already behind schedule. It's behind schedule because, a lot of times you didn't have a very good first down play because you maybe got a little greedy, wanted to passing play. I'm a broken record. I like the running game. It's fun for me to be able to see teams, kind of dedicate themselves to trying to establish the run, at least the threat of a run, right? Just to see what you can do with play action passing. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons, you look at the difference between them from this week and last week. That game against the Raiders. I mean, they beat the Raiders, but
I guess,
yeah, they sort of beat the Raiders, a team that's only won. They only had won 2 games up to that point in time. But there was no really, despite having a great running back, there was no ability to do play action passing because of the quarterback's mobility. And so now you get a quarterback in there that can. We can take advantage of Robinson out of the backfield, have a strong running game, but also that play action pass, which can be pretty exciting too, right? So, but yeah, I think your wife is right. It's so much more marketable when you got Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes isn't lighting up the scoreboard this year at the Chiefs, but he's got the face that everybody recognizes. He's in every T-Mobile commercial around him, and Snoop, right? And your wife might be the casual fan. She certainly knows who Patrick Mahomes is, and she loves to watch him, throw touchdown passes. And even though he doesn't throw a lot of touchdown passes,
she doesn't care for him that much.
Care for him. Well, good. I'm getting tired of him. It's like. Remember LeBron James played in 7 NBA finals in a row? It's like, I want to see somebody different. I would like to see somebody different. I got tired of Tom Brady. Now I'm tired of Patrick Mahomes.
No, I agree. I think that a lot of people feel that way, that same sentiment. I know myself and my other 2 buddies that we do this show with, we all feel the same. It's always funny. We see the stat every week that if the Chiefs continue to win 1 possession games, they barely squeak by. If there was a stat that said if all their 1 possession games that they won, if they were switched and they all turned to losses, they would be the worst team in the NFL. I think they'd be like 2-12 or something like that.
Well, the point differential was, I looked at it a couple of weeks ago and it was like 50 something or whatever. And you're like, wow, you're like 13-1 or whatever they were at the time. The 50 point differential, which is they're getting it done. I'm looking forward to the Denver game, which is in a couple of weeks, because I watched all of that Denver KC game, a month and a half ago.
Blocked kick one. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Denver won that football game. They did everything that they could at Arrowhead and on the road. And then to have a very makeable field goal block, I'm like, how did that even happen? But stuff, it does happen.
No, it does. There was a stat that I saw, or just kind of brief. I just looked it up real quick to kind of cap off the running game and how important it is, especially later in the season and to win playoff games. 7 of the 10 top rushing yards or top rushers in the NFL right now are on teams that would be in the playoffs if this season ended right now. 7 of the top 10. The other 3 are kind of outliers. Jonathan Taylor, I guess the Colts are on the fringe of the playoffs, etc. James Conner, Cardinals just got eliminated last week. And then Chuba Hubbard, kind of a random outlier there. But besides that, 7 of the top 10 rushers are on all playoff teams.
Yeah, you run the football. The advantages of running the football is that the other team's offense sits, right? And if you tend to run the football well in the first quarter, you're going to run it even better in the fourth quarter. Defensive linemen get tired. They cycle in those defensive linemen. It also makes an awful lot of sense. And you look at today's NFL, you're always looking for an edge rusher. And if you have an edge rusher, they're always lined up in that D gap, right? You look at a player, pick any of the Bosa boys or anybody else who's an edge rusher, and TJ Watt, everybody, they're way out there, right? They are combat ineffective for a run between the tackles. Then you also, after a generation, 10 years or so of drafting cornerbacks that can run a 4.4 backwards, but don't have really much interest in tackling. Take the quarterback out of the game and the edge and 1 edge rusher and 2 cornerbacks out of the game, and you're playing a 10-on-8 game of football, right? Mm-hmm. So you should be able to run the football. You look at the Colts, you look at your left guard. Nelson's a player that's going to be a Hall of Famer for sure, right? And got a road grader like him, just it's not a surprise that Jonathan Taylor runs that he does, and Jonathan Taylor, he gets dinged up every once in a while, but is a great running back. But if you run the football, you keep the other team's offense off the ball, so it's. I mean, there's an advantage right there. Win the time of possession, win the field position game. If you can run the football, you're typically will be able to kind of, football at its heart is a game of territory, right? So make the other team have to go 80, 90 yards every drive. And if you only have to go, 70 or 60 yards every drive, it's kind of like in hockey. If you win those 50-50 pucks, make them 55-45, you got a good chance of winning the game, right? So.
Yeah, there was a drive, I think it was last week, the Philly, was it Philly Steelers, I believe? Where Philly had I think like a 12 or 13 minute drive to like end the game. I was like, wow, that you'll never see that ever. That is insane.
Yeah. And that's one of the frustrating things. And all of us fans are, you get the ball you're up, 3-4 points or something like that. 4 minutes to play. The 4-minute offense, right? So all you need is 2-3 first downs. Run the football, and you can't get it done. And it's like the dropped interception. It's like, oh, here we go. We just dropped the interception. Next play is going to be a touchdown pass, right? Yes. It's just one first down is all you need. Just one first down. If you can get that first down, the game is over. And it seems to never happen. But yeah, the Eagles put that game away by just eating up the clock and playing keep away and running the football. And it's, that's another thing that I think is really fascinating about the different eras in sports is fumbling. Franco Harris is on my book. The cover of the book. Franco Harris was a fumbler, and I hate to say it. His wife's going to be mad at me. He holds the record for fumbles. 90 fumbles in 173 games. Interestingly enough, the guy who's tied with him is Tony Dorsett. Walter was just 4 behind him. The great Walter Payton fumbled 86 times. Mike Tomlin said a handful of years ago they had drafted a running back out of Illinois, Mendenhall, Rashad Mendenhall, I think his name might have been. He also been playing with Arizona, and they were asking him in training camp. It's like, hey, what's how's the new draft pick? You having some fun with it? Exciting skill player. He's like, well, first of all, he's got to learn how to protect the quarterback. Second of all, he's got to learn how to protect the football. And then third of all, we'll see how we can run. And I thought it was fascinating right there. It's like, man, you're talking about a high draft pick. It might have been a first-round draft pick, if not a second-round draft pick. High draft pick, a running back. And the way that you get to see the field has nothing to do with the way that you run. The most important things were protect the quarterback, protect the football. Then we'll see how you can run. And I think that's really interesting change in how the game was. Lawrence Taylor for me was the guy that kind of invented the strip sack. But that was when football players started really thinking we can take away the football. But long before that, people were fumbling. But now as coaching it up, it's like you got to protect the football because turnovers lose football games. Turnovers are instant changes in field position, dramatic changes of field position, particularly fumbles. Interceptions, it might take place 10, 20, 30 yards downfield. Fumbles are usually either in the backfield from the quarterback or, around close to the line of scrimmage. So there's this, change of possession, change of field position. If you fumble, you can't play, and that you mentioned Kareem Hunt earlier. He's a great example of a guy who just doesn't fumble the football. And that's the way you have to be in the NFL today. The only fumblers you're allowed on a team is really the quarterback. And even if you fumble then, because of a lot of sacks or whatever, you still get, you get a lot of heat for it.
Do you think that, you said Lawrence Taylor, the king of trying to get, strip the ball, or, Peanut Tillman trying to, the peanut punch, trying to get the ball out. Do you think more players now, like on the defensive side of the ball, are trying to tackle less and just strictly trying to get the turnover to make a bigger play?
Sometimes, sometimes you see that and it's like, hey, just wrap up, man, and get the tackle. But, it's definitely a coached aspect of, second guy in. If you do have a guy wrapped up, second guy in. Cowboys did it a couple of times last night on the game. Sometimes it's let's try to make the big play, and you forget about just making the play. And, I think that maybe in football you see that most often with fumbles. When they're on the ground, the defense trying to get a scoop and score a big play as opposed to just get on the football first, and it seems like almost every week we see an instance like I could have had a turnover there, but he tried to make a bigger play out of it than it was. So maybe forgetting some of the fundamentals, but then again, a play like that is a complete game changer, right? You get a defensive score. I wonder what the statistics are. I'm gonna have to look it up. But if you get a defensive score, I gotta think that the chances are of you winning are probably pretty good.
Yeah, they're not supposed to score. Like they're just there to.
I feel bad for defensive players, man. You can't do anything. You can't hit anybody. You can't tackle anybody. Every penalty except for one on defense is an automatic first down. And one rule I would love to see changed is the spot foul for pass interference.
I was just going to ask you that. I was literally going to ask you if you could change any rule now. What would it be?
I like the college rule. Man, give it 15 yards, and that's all. I think back to last year. It was a primetime game. I think it was a Sunday game. Kansas City was at Green Bay, and it was pass interference down the field. Even a Green Bay Packer fan can tell you this. And but it wasn't called. And the Chiefs ended up losing that game. But the Chiefs have been outplayed the whole game. The Packers deserve to win that game. And there was just seconds left. And Mahomes heaves up and throws it about as far as he can. And there's this interference play 40, 50 yards downfield. And it should have been interference. It would have changed the entire game. And I just think, having that big of an impact on the game. I mean, we don't go to the games to see the referees make pass interference calls, right? And I just think it changes the game too much, and it's already hard enough to play defense in the NFL. With the way the rules are established, it's like let's just make it a 15-yarder. I think I'm the only dude that will say that. I mean, everybody likes that idea of let's get the ball in the red zone, and I mean we've got an entire channel on Sunday that has nothing but the red zones from various games, right? So people want to move the ball that downfield.
No, it was funny because I'm not sure if you watch college football a lot too, but I do. I'm a huge Ohio State fan. My family's actually from Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio. So we watched the Buckeyes play Tennessee Volunteers and whoop them actually. So that was really exciting. And Jeremiah Smith, top freshman wide receiver for the Buckeyes, gets mugged every single game, but they foul him, like you said, 15 yards, which is fine. I think it makes the game more competitive. And it was crazy because when they lost against Michigan 2-3 weeks ago, they fouled him twice in the end zone, 15 yards. And, instead of a spot foul, like you said, which I think would ruin the game, if there's a spot foul that puts us on the one and you have 4 plays to get in the end zone, the chances are pretty high they're going to get in the end zone. But if you're throwing it from, the 40 or 35 and you get a 15-yard penalty, now you're only on the 20 or the 25, etc. They fouled him twice in the end zone against Michigan, and they held us to a total of both those possessions to 3 points.
Yeah.
And that, obviously the result, definitely not what I wanted. I'm over it. But that made the game, well more competitive and makes it a play at that point. It's a good defense. Hey, he's going to burn me. I'm just going to give him 15 yards and let's regroup and see if we could take him down now. And they did twice.
And 15 yards is still a significant penalty. I mean, you can rush a quarterback and be 15 yards. That Jeremiah Smith, man, he's a pro wide receiver already. And the dude just turned 19 a little while ago. That guy's going to be fun to watch for another 15 years. And only another couple at Ohio State because he's got to be I would think he's probably a top 5 draft pick April. If he came out this April, much less, in 2027. So, he's a great player. When you talk about Jeremiah, it's also like that Jeremiah over at Notre Dame. He's another guy that back is he's another beast.
And Notre Dame's a great example. They're running the ball. They could run the ball and control the game. And Jeremiah Love, obviously few and far in between are going to break off a 96, 97-yard touchdown. Those are kind of, kind of rare, but they could run the ball. They've been running really well. I mean, Notre Dame's offensive line U, as some call it. So they definitely know how to recruit some big boys to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, and Texas doing a good job of running the football too in college, and so yeah, it's will be interesting to watch the rest of the playoffs. I don't know if we needed to expand them as much as we did. The games we had last weekend weren't particularly great games, but then again, when there was only 4 teams in the playoff, a lot of times there weren't great games either. We'll see what's
A lot of people missed that. A lot of people missed that. They were kind of complaining like, "Oh, the first round was kind of blowouts," and I was like, "Do you remember when Michigan State was number 4 in the playoffs?"
We had for years we suffered with. Even the championship games. Where we had mismatches.
Notre Dame, Alabama, 2012, not even close.
Yeah, we had and anybody who played LSU that one year, 5 years ago or whatever. We do have short memories, but we're never going to make people happy. I mean, when selection whatever Sunday came about, it's like all these teams crying around. With the exception of Florida State last year, if you win your games, you're going to be in. Just win ball games. You're like, if you're 8 or if you're 9-3, yeah, man, you lost 3 times. So make sure when you're pointing fingers, you realize that there's 3 other fingers pointing right back at you. That there's some things that maybe you could have done differently.
No, I agree. Like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I did have just one of your curious to see your predictions for the remainder of the season of this season. Kind of your outlook of which teams do you like? You think you can actually make a good playoff run? Lions were kind of a big pick, and they have like 21, 22 players on the IR now. They've kind of dipped down in my head, or in my my pseudo checklist. What teams kind of stand out to you this late in the season? Week 16 now.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to pan out. I'll start from teams that might not even get in. Tampa Bay is a team that I think that nobody would want to play in a matchup. I mean, they are tough, physical. I watched them play the Chargers, 8 days ago or something like that.
Oof.
They take care of business, man, and they didn't take care of business last night. But they are a football team I don't think anybody would want to play. But when I look at the NFC, I still like the Lions, and I like the Lions simply because it looks like they're going to play at home. I think the loss that the Eagles had this last weekend might come back to haunt them. I'm not completely sold on them. They have a defense and a defensive line that can play great, but you put their strength, which I think is defense, go up against the Lions' offense. I think maybe the Lions might have something for them. The key question in my mind would be: can the Lions defense stop the Eagles if the Eagles get that running game going, and if the Hurts is healthy, and I would expect him to be healthy. I would maybe expect him to play this coming weekend. So I kind of like those two at the end. Minnesota, I mean, I think all of us, Zach, we've kind of looked back at Minnesota this year in the NFC and said, well, they're not supposed to be that good. They're doing that with smoke and mirrors. But here we are, 15 weeks later, and they've won 13 ball games, and they lost 2 they lost 1 to the Lions, who are best team in football, maybe. And then they lost 1 Thursday, 4 days later. They had to go all the way across the country, and
LA, right?
Yeah, they played in LA, and they had a chance late to win that game, but they didn't play their best. But it was on 3 days rest, and road teams rarely win on Thursday, right? That's the kind of the bad news about playing Thursday night football. Road teams are at a huge disadvantage. So the Vikings might be in there too, and then I love the Bills. I think they play well, but how do you? I wouldn't bet against the Chiefs with Andy Reid at coach and Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. They're getting it done. It hasn't been sexy, but yeah, I can think maybe you look at maybe the Lions and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, which would be kind of cool. But that's what maybe I'm seeing. What do you see?
I like Tampa Bay. I liked Tampa Bay early in the season. Definitely. I like Baker Mayfield. Ever since he kind of came into the league, I kind of liked him. I kind of picked them to win the division too, and then they kind of fell off. Kirk had that huge run going for Atlanta. Obviously Kirk's not even playing anymore because he had a terrible, terrible fall off after that. And last night kind of burnt my hopes a little bit, but I think they'll kind of kick it back into gear. I could see Tampa Bay going in as they would get a home playoff game if they make it. Win their division. I could see them, upsetting someone. They would probably be the lowest division winner, so they would host the Commanders. I could see them winning that game, for sure. I love Jane Daniels, but I can't see them winning a playoff game. I think they're exciting. I think hopefully it can keep getting better. I don't think I see a hard time the Lions beating the Eagles. I don't know. The whole Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, kind of dual back, I think was their biggest strength, and their defense with no, Aiden Hutchinson. I get one player doesn't make your whole defense. I get that. But if you're going to beat the Eagles, you're going to have to beat them, 45-40? That's tough.
And they couldn't beat the Bills, last week, playing, Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Yeah. So I think the NFC is pretty strong all throughout. Minnesota's a sleeper team. My wife likes them randomly. She was like, "Oh, that's cool." She actually picked them. We were in Vegas when the season started, like before the season. She's like, "Oh, I want to throw $10 on the Vikings to win the Super Bowl." I was like, "What? Why?"
That's only pretty
every
good.
week.
The odds have to be 25-1 or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Every week she reminds me. She was like, "How many wins they have? Oh, 12? Oh, how many wins this week? 13? She's like, "Oh, okay." Every week. Last night too, we were out at dinner and, watching them beat the Seahawks, Justin Jefferson getting that, kind of game-winning touchdown at the end too. She's like, "Who's that again?" Oh. And it sucks. And you see the Vikings and they have to go on the road at, winning 14 games in a season. That's insane. Like, how disappointing, Can I see them upsetting, someone? Maybe. I can't see them coming out of the NFC to go to the Super Bowl. So if Jalen Hurts is healthy, like you said, I would imagine that he would be, unless it was something that everyone kind of missed. I could see the Eagles coming out and beating the Lions, in an NFC championship. AFC, I think it really is top heavy. I can't picture the Broncos or the Chargers, as much as I like both those teams coming out of the AFC. However, I could see either the Broncos or the Chargers, whoever gets that 7th seed, or whatever, whoever has to play the Chiefs in that second round, I could see them upsetting the Chiefs to go to the AFC Championship. But I do think the Bills come out.
You're picking Eagles Super Bowl, huh?
I would pick Bills over Eagles. 28-19.
I can't argue with what you're saying. It's funny how we both like Tampa Bay. I don't know if I don't think Tampa Bay wins the Super Bowl. I don't think Tampa Bay gets an NFC Championship game, if they even get in the playoffs. But I think the team that beats Tampa Bay is going to be they're going to need an ice bath before they play their next games. And I wonder how much, if you square off against Tampa Bay, how much that's going to take out of you for your next game. That, I think maybe if the Broncos might be the same type of thing. You play the Broncos and you're in for I can't believe Sean Payton's turned that team around so quickly. I didn't see it coming. So the two teams that maybe I didn't see it the most were the Vikings and the Broncos, and maybe even the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh maybe a year or two ahead of schedule, right?
I agree.
So it's been interesting. It's gonna be fun to watch. I love watching the Lions play. I mean, they're not boring. And for a guy like at my age, I am used to a lot of boring Thanksgiving mornings with a horrible Detroit Lion football team. But now,
yeah.
They're something to watch, right? So
No, I like the pick. Yeah, I'm excited. Curious how this. I think the playoffs. Besides the kind of the few of those other teams, are set. Now it's more of just who's going to play against who, and obviously the Tampa Bay Atlanta division winner is going to be a good one. And I mean, hey, Minnesota could actually win that division. I mean, they play Week 18, which would be absolutely nuts if it came down to that. Mm-hmm. Detroit, Minnesota to host a playoff game. So
host them all. Yeah. So that would be something. Vikings are a good team, man. The Seahawks gave them a run yesterday. Like I said, Seahawks my favorite team, and Darnold's getting it done. They got one of the best players ever at the wideout position. And their defense, they go after people, right? So they're a good football team, man. Your wife may be on something. I don't know. Maybe she picked them because of purple or whatever. I don't know, but
I don't know.
So far, so good. right?
I was like, do you even know who their quarterback is? Like, do you even know anything? She's like, no, I don't know. It's Sam Darnold, right? I was like, yeah. He wasn't even supposed to play. He wasn't even supposed to play.
Yeah.
But
The
I love
interesting
it.
thing is going to be, where's he going to play next year?
Yes.
He has had such a good year. I'm not so sure if you're the Vikings, you let him go. I mean, I know they're invested with J.J. McCarthy, but I mean, one in the hand, two in the bush type of thing, whatever. And, would it be worthwhile for him to put a pretty big cap number? I got to think his cap number is going to be maybe 30 million next year, the way that he's played this year. And if he finishes, unless he just implodes over the last two games in the playoffs, I don't know if you let him go. There are a lot of teams I think would like to see him. If anybody needs a bridge quarterback, I think Sam Darnold's that, or maybe even better than that.
Niners are going to pick him back up and not pay Purdy.
That's one of the things that I had a discussion today with. It's like you look at the 49ers roster, and I know we're running so long on this, but you look at the 49er roster and all the money that they're spending on people. And, his cap number is not going to rise next year, but they will have to pay a bonus for it, right? And so that will hit. But, you're looking to have to make some painful decisions. Kittle makes a lot of money. Is he worth it? Probably. Debo makes a lot of money. Is he worth it? I don't know, but probably.
Catch the ball.
These are kind of like hard calls. These are players that have played really well for you, but haven't had the great years. And this was the year for Brock Purdy to really make a statement. It's like, I am a force multiplier. Without Brandon Ayuk and without Christian McCaffrey, I made the rest of the team better. And he hasn't done that, right? And so do you pay him $55, $60 million? I don't think he's in the top 10 of NFL quarterbacks. He might not be in the top 16. He might be in the 50th percentile.
Bottom half, yeah.
So, I mean, what are you going to pay him? And, it's like, yeah, but he took a healthy 49er team to the Super Bowl. So did Jimmy Garoppolo, and he wasn't good enough for you. And so, in fact, who would start now? Kyle Shanahan's got this offense. He can make anyone look good because he's a great football coach, right? One thing that they can do is run the football and make a quarterback look good. He's made everybody look good for him. Even, think back to all those injuries that people had. C.J. Beathard, people like that. Nick Mullins would come in and they'd be fantastic, right? And I just don't know if you pay him a lot of money. It's going to be an interesting question. It's going to be great to see. Have me back on so we can talk about it afterwards, Zach.
No, the off-season stuff is more exciting. One of my buddies, he gets all into it, like the salary caps and who owes what. And so he loves getting into the numbers game of all the salaries. I go more off of feel, like I'm like, oh, no, I just have a strong feeling a certain way. And he's like, well, they can't afford it. I'm like, it doesn't matter what they can afford. I was like, this is what I'm feeling. But I know the money is a big part. But no, I appreciate it, Ray, having you on and talking about, football from the 70s and 80s, 90s leading up till now. And the game, I think is completely different. And hopefully we kind of, as we mentioned, and both hopefully want, not a lot of people do, but kind of getting back to the more physical running the damn ball, RTDB, as they say. A lot of the teams.
Zach, it's not flag football. So yeah, let's. There's a reason your parents have to sign their permission slip, man. There's a reason you put pads on.
That is true. There is a reason for the pay. You got a helmet for a reason. But no, I appreciate it, Ray. Was there anything else that I missed?
Man, I wanted to wish you and your wife and your family, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be on. And you listeners out there that we've shared some opinions, and they might not, be opinions that you agree with. So let us know, man. Hit us up in the comments. You can also hit me up at any of the social media platforms. It's just my name, Ray Hartjen. I love talking sports, love talking football in particular. And so, if you want to tell me,
I like the opposite opinions. It makes it more exciting.
Yeah, and what could it be if everyone agreed on the same thing, right?
No, 100%. I'll put your socials in the show notes and stuff when I upload it as well, if that's okay with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Love people. And if you're looking for a good last minute gift, check out Immaculate. How the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh.
Immaculate. How Steelers Saved Pittsburgh. I love it. Mine's on the way. Hopefully it gets here. We'll get here before Christmas. I know that. But nonetheless, it'll be a book that I could read in the new year. That is
necessary. You told me you weren't a reader. You told us all you weren't a reader. So I'm hoping this is going to change you by the end of it. And I'm going to read the rest of Ray's books.
I know. No, I'm excited. I appreciate it, Ray. Thanks so much, man. Have a good, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I would love to have you on in the future as well. Talk some more football. We may at the end of the season get some more off-season, off-season predictions and stuff as well.
Maybe one of us can brag. It's like you can say, like, man, I told you the Eagles or the Bills. I told you it was going to be the Chiefs and the Lions. So
awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ray. I appreciate it. Awesome. Have a good one.
You too.